So in the old days, we would have called today Stewardship Sunday, the day when the operating budget campaign begins, and you'll see the themes throughout the service. And this year, it's going to begin 3 times. I'm going to say a few words about money today and how we need it. And Micah is going to say a few words next Sunday about money and how we need it. And then Valerie is going to say 3 weeks from now a sermon about money and how we need it. But please don't run away now. It's not going to be that bad. It actually could be fun, as the widow and her mite would be happy to tell you. So money has an increasingly bad reputation. Some people think that the president is making money off his relationships with foreign officials. Other people think that Joe Biden, a candidate for president and former vice president, made money or at least satisfied members of his family through foreign dealings. You can pick apart the details, but there seems to be a growing consensus that there are good ways to make money, and using your power to get more of it is not so good, and working just for yourself is not so good. It's so important, therefore, to figure out, well, then, what is a good way to use money and make money? I'm sure we want to restore the reputation of money. We want to live in a world where money is just energy. Like Lynn Twist says, we want to use our money well, and we want to use it rightly. So The Widow and Her Mite, this short story, is a very good way to restore some virtue to this thing that's got us all in a twist. A mite, as it says in the lesson, is a pittance. It's almost nothing, maybe pennies, just like the kind of pennies we discard at the convenience store when we just can't deal with all that change. Just toss it in the jar. The widow is a lot like one of our members who grew up in Miami. An immigrant from Nicaragua, he and his mom lived on couches all over Miami. He says that he didn't know he was poor. His mom kept the truth well hidden from him so it wouldn't poison his relationship with himself or his relationship with money. And in thinking about this person, it occurred to me that maybe the widow also didn't know that she was poor. Or maybe the widow instead was like someone else, the great writer, the great travel writer, Paul Theroux, who fell, you may have seen the article in last week's Sunday Times, who fell into a deep depression about his life. Can you imagine? About how old and forgotten he was. Theroux couldn't possibly have been poor, given all those royalties I and others gave him over the years. But still, he felt poor. He felt useless. He felt discarded. And so he took a road trip to Mexico to see if he still had any oomph left in him for travel writing. He was so sad he didn't even want to work. And the first thing that happened to him was that he saw a Zapotec woman praying before her meal in a shelter. She had left 3 young children with her mother down south and was trying to get into the United States to get what we would call a low-paying job so she could send money back to her children so that they could eat. She had become lost in the desert and was spotted by the Border Patrol. And in the longer story that Thoreau actually wrote, it's a very long story as it is, he said that her picture praying for her meal while he was so depressed, having so much, began to turn him. It began to turn him from sadness to appreciation. And then he reports he traveled on a road from Oaxaca to Reynosa and became even more distracted by his own sadness. And the praying woman that he forgot to ask if the road was safe before he left the shelter, didn't know. And it turned out that it very much was not a safe road, the road from Oaxaca to Reynosa that he went down. And when he arrived at his destination, a person ran up to him, a very poor man, and said, "How did you get here?" And he said, "I drove." And the man said, "Well, very few people make it on the road you took. You are a very lucky man." That also changed his mood. He began to realize just how lucky he was. Thoreau was like our friend Henry. He didn't know really what was going on with him. He thought he was poor and depressed. He thought he had lost his way, but he remained lucky. See, he didn't know how poor he was really, and he didn't know how rich he was either. One of my favorite movies is Schindler's List, in which the great benefactor of many Jews, one who brought people's freedom by selling his fancy cars, in the most moving scene in the movie, Schindler realized he still got one more car, one that he didn't sell. And he burst into tears and he said, "I could have saved another family. Instead, I've got this stupid car." Another of my favorite movies is called The Spelling Bee. In it, a kind of resolution to the problem I'm setting up develops. I'm trying to set up the problem of whether Judson knows if it's rich or poor. Does anyone really know if they're rich or poor? Do we often get it wrong? In The Spelling Bee, there's a resolution. A girl is about to beat a boy in a national competition, and she throws the match and misspells a word on purpose. So compassionate is she about the boy who is her competition. Now, before all your feminist hackles get going and your justice hackles get going, guess what happens next? Some of you will know. He then throws the next word for her. And next thing you know, these two champions are the last two left in the national competition, and they go after it one after another word, after another word, after another word, and the only thing the judges can figure out how to do is to declare a tie. Throwing the match is when more than one person wins. The movie ends up with something that I think is like our destination. Isn't it possible to win by losing? Or to win by making room for others? Or to know that you don't know much about winning or losing? And furthermore, what we really don't know much about is Jesus. I don't know if the widow was intentionally trying to please Jesus, but she sure did. I don't think she knew where she was going at all. She just threw her bet on the table. And I also don't know if Judson is Schindler or a spelling bee champion, or like a kid asleep on a couch his mother has found, luckily once again, or if we are like Paul Theroux, gifted, sainted, well-loved, and a little bit depressed about getting old, which, by the way, we're not. Sometimes this building just makes you feel that way. But surely we are all those people when it comes to our money. We could do more, like Schindler could have done more. We could throw more games to more people, more oppressed by winning. We could couch surf more and align our mattresses with our values. We could also set out to have life end in a tie and to take just enough care of each other that everybody wins a little. And we could be more like the widow and her mite. We could understand that we are a little bit orphaned, widowed by the normal way of being church. We tried that, we couldn't do it. And so we remain perpetually poor and unable to keep our building and our hopes going in a world where many churches don't have all the fun we have or the people we have or the ministries we have, but their buildings sure look good. We also have pennies, and we are surrounded in Manhattan by a world of much richer people, right next door, right across the street, and in Manhattan in general. And we might even every now and then want to orient ourselves towards the approval of Jesus. Jesus, our charter, our legacy, the first line in our articles of incorporation. Doing so would require that we continue to give more than we have, that we continue to throw the match towards the other, towards the people in our world in this great city who may be really rich, but who are also so anxious about their future that they raise their children badly. We could head for a tie with our money. So what would that mean in this pledge campaign? We could surely take care of ourselves and take care of others with a goal of having more champions everywhere in the world. We could aim for a tie between self and other. We could lay our money down and make bets that the insider, us, and the outsider, so-called them and us, me and they, are the same people. That it's not about insiders or outsiders, but about us. And there is no them. What impresses me most about the widow is that she was rich enough to trust the universe. She wasn't thinking about tomorrow. It's the Jesus way to trust the universe and aim for a tie. So the widow did not corrupt money. She did the opposite. She made a decision about how to use what she had. She surely did not get high on her own supply because she didn't have much of a supply. She wasn't running for anything so much as running towards something. She thought that if she gave what she had to the alms, that somebody would give it back to her. That's a radical form of wealth, trust. So, in the next few weeks, we're going to be making personal decisions about money and Judson. This campaign is going to go for about 2 months. We are clearing the way for Advent and for a capital campaign, a second phase that will start after the first of the year. In that campaign, we're going to do what the widow did and rely for the capital phase 2 on this community for whom we have done so much. It'll hurt if they don't give back, right? But we have to trust the universe, don't we? We have to, and we can, and we will. And of course, I hope that those of you who can will make a first pledge. If you haven't pledged before, a pledge is a promise to give over the year to operating. And those of you who can, I hope you will raise your operating pledges by 10%. 10%. And if neither of those things work, if the community doesn't come through and the congregation doesn't come through, we'll go back to being poor. What we won't do is what one of our members did once to me when we had a growing youth group in the congregation, which we happen to have here as well. She called up and said, "I have the best couch for you. It'll be just right for your youth room." And I went over to her house to see the couch, and it had holes in it, and the springs were broken. And I said, "No, thank you. That's not the couch we need for our youth room." Marcel Proust once referred to Florence as a city miraculously embalmed beautiful and useless, not alive. We need to be very careful not to become miraculously embalmed. Instead, we need to become miraculously alive, not because we have enough, but because we believe we have enough. Church can be bountiful. Church can be abundant. Church can be rich, even when it's not. Amen.